Will Howard's fire could be the spark Ohio State needs to pick up a win in Happy Valley.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to your Hump Day edition of Locked On Buckeyes, your daily Ohio State podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. During today's show, we'll dive into our weekly stock watch and if Ohio State's run game will bounce back against Penn State, as well as Will Howard's fire, and it could be the spark Ohio State needs to pick up a win in Happy Valley, because one thing we know about Ohio State right now is they need somebody to pick them up. The juice is not the way that it needs to be. It's not at the level that it needs to be. Press conferences are a little dead. Coach speaks fills the entire time. Players are not as lively or not as amped up as they need to be, and they got to find a spark from somebody. Look at number 18. When I hear people say after last Saturday's game that not everybody was as seen as down or upset with the way the game went, yes, Ohio State won the game, but my goodness, man, it was a struggle bus for most of the game. Pretty much all game long, it was a struggle for the offense, and defensively, they did a lot of things, being on the field for 35-plus minutes. Defense played way better than you would think any defense would be that was on the field for that length of time. But this team desperately needs somebody to pick them up, somebody to ignite them, light a fire under them. Will Howard's that guy. Will Howard has already shown he is amped up, he is hyped, he is ready to go every single week. You see it against Oregon. Yeah, it was a loss, but it wasn't like he was just going to go down and just lay an egg and drop down and say, oh, y'all got it. I ain't got to keep going. Against Nebraska, he made plays. He even showed things against Nebraska that he hadn't really shown much this year. Yeah, he made a throw that was pretty bad, but he ended the game 13-16, 3 passing touchdowns. He did a lot of things right in that game too. When it comes to the offense, when it comes to the defense, it does not matter. You got to find somebody to lean on. Somebody to light a fire under you when sometimes you can't do it yourself. Will Howard's a guy. If everybody was able to take a piece of Will Howard's fire and just put it under them and ignite themselves, and it goes off everybody that's on the team, all the coaches, think about how much fun it would be to watch Ohio State play this weekend. Nobody that's listening to this right now is an Ohio State fan wants to have a stressful game on Saturday. But one thing we know about Ohio State, Penn State, a lot of times they're close. They're abnormal games that might have an abnormal score, and people are sitting on pins and needles. You don't want to need Will Howard to go 19-19 like JT Barrett did during, I think, his final game playing Penn State in the fourth quarter. That were his numbers. You don't want him to do that. You don't want to make Will Howard have to make a game-winning throw to a tight end like JT Barrett did to Marcus Ball to go ahead and to win the game. You don't want that. But if you do, you want to make sure that, one, your quarterback is lit up and he's on fire, which he has been all year long, but also everybody else is amped up too. And I don't like coming on here. I don't want to be negative. I want to move away from Nebraska. There's been a lot of negative conversations surrounding that game, which was a win. Who can you lean on? That's kind of my thought right now. We're thinking about Will Howard, not only the fire that he's going to be able to light under players, that he should be able to light under players, and players should gravitate towards that. But I'm thinking about players that you can lean on. You can lean on number 18. You can lean on number 2 on both sides of the ball, Caleb Downs and Emeka Buka. Number 4, Jeremiah Smith. He has shown, just put the ball in his hands. Behind the line of scrimmage, in front of the line of scrimmage, after the line of scrimmage, baby, it don't matter. He going to get the job done. He has already shown that he's a better true freshman receiver than anybody I've ever seen in my lifetime, probably anybody that you've ever seen, unless maybe you saw Randy Moss. Outside of that, I don't know if there's ever been a true freshman wide receiver that's the caliber of Jeremiah Smith. He is playing better than most guys that are he's already better than most 4 or 5 year college football receivers because he's that good. I mean, you think about the guy who was the most seasoned wide receiver, a guy that may be the best you have seen in the Scarlet and Gray. Jeremiah Smith is better. Some of you are Route Man Marv's guys. Jeremiah Smith is better. Somebody might be, you might say, oh, I'm going to ride with Jackson Smith and Jigba. Jeremiah Smith is better. You might want to ride with Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave. Jeremiah Smith is better. One thing Will Howard has in his back pocket is number 4, and you can rely on him. So not only can you rely on number 18, you can rely on number 2 on both sides of the ball. You can rely on number 4, and these are great starting points. But Will Howard also needs to light a fire under the offensive line. Now, here's the weird thing. Even with the injury issues the offensive line is dealing with, that doesn't mean Will Howard can't light a fire under them. Seth McLaughlin, one of those guys that was described as a top leader on the team, as well as Cody Simon, Lathan Ransom, Jack Sawyer, and Emeka Ibuka. Interesting thing about Lathan Ransom is we're not really sure if he's going to play. My gut said probably not. Because if you tell me that a guy is going to hopefully get a full week of practice in this week, or you're planning on him getting a full week of practice in this week, it kind of tells me he's not going to be ready to play Saturday based off the way that Ryan Day normally talks about players, which is unfortunate. But what we got this past Saturday was there's some guys on the bench that have a fire under them when they're on the field. And it's not a fire that maybe Will Howard lit. Maybe it's Caleb Downs lit that thing. But there are guys that are on fire. And let's just say that fire spreads from Will Howard to the offensive line, to everybody else on offense, from Caleb Downs up to Jack Sawyer, up to Tyleik Williams, and everybody else in the defense. Let's just say that fire is lit across the field. Everybody brought their A game to Happy Valley. Everybody and their mama is out here believing that Ohio State is bringing their A game. They got the right game plan. The coaches are scheming things up properly. We're having a certain level of conversation on Saturday that is not the same tone that we had the previous Saturday because of a fire, man. I mean, think about wildfires. I have never been around a wildfire when it was started or just one in general. But one thing I know is from what I hear about wildfires and what I see on TV, them bad boys keep spreading and spreading and spreading and spreading, and it's very hard to get them to calm down. I believe it was this time last year or maybe closer to December last year where there was the wildfires in Canada, our neighbors to the north, and the wildfire, the smoke trickled down to America. So think about that. Our neighbors to the north, and I am in Indiana. Ohio is not far from, it's on the border of Indiana. So we're right next to each other. And all of a sudden I was at work one night and I look up and I'm like, whoa, why is it so hard to breathe? Why is it so cloudy? And people said the wildfires from Canada were all the way down to the middle of Ohio, the middle of Indiana, all over the Midwest. And that's how crazy wildfires are. That maybe the fire doesn't spread to you, but the ashes do. And think about if the fire just gets a part of these players, man, that desperately need to pick me up. I mean, I've heard Zach Bourne talk about the players and how it felt like a funeral this past Saturday on the sidelines. And I've heard Bobby Carver talk about that some of these guys are more introverted than extroverted, and some of them don't really express their emotions in a certain way. I'm not really trying to dive into all that and get into that whole conversation, but sometimes guys just need a little pick-me-up. Some guys need somebody just a lot of fire under them. And just like the wildfire in Canada that had all the ashes and the smoke coming to America, the same thing can happen with this fire, man. Maybe that smoke, I will talk about that smoke. That smoke, once it hits, once that fire hits and it spreads, that smoke is going to go all around the country. And everybody in college football is going to realize Ohio State's on fire. Yeah, they had a loss against Oregon. Yeah, they had a struggle to win, a struggle bus type of win against Nebraska. But, man, something happened at Penn State week. They went to Happy Valley. They left with a win. They have never been the same. And why is it? Somebody going to look back at number 18 and say, Will Howard did something that week. Will Howard lit a fire under that team, and they realized this is do or die. This ain't no survivor in advance. Baby, this is do or die. If you want to accomplish your goals, you got to win this game, because losing to Penn State probably means you're not going to be in the Big Ten championship, and that's one of the reasons all these vets came back was to win that game. And to win that game is something Ohio State's run game must do this weekend to help Ohio State have a chance to win the Big Ten championship down the road. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Game Time allows so many things to happen that make your ticket purchasing process so easy. Game Time Picks, it's a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Maybe you're trying to get last-minute tickets to the Eras Tour. Game Time gotcha. They got the all-in pricing. You can get a panoramic view from your seat. They got that lowest price guarantee, and they also got the Game Time ticket coverage as well. And all of this is to help you take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. Thank you all for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen every day. One thing I love about this team right now is that it's talented. It is very, very talented. Now, one thing I don't like about this team is they have injuries at very key positions. Now, if you look at Penn State, who you're playing this weekend, one person said, well, Penn State got a lot of injuries. Yeah, but Ohio State's injuries are to some very key positions. Lathan Ransom on defense. You might be to your third string left tackle, which might be Donovan Jackson. Who's playing left guard? I don't know. What's going to be the fix at right guard? I don't know. But let's just say the run game this weekend starts to get things right, starts to figure things out, starts to get some traction. It's going to be primarily because the offensive line is figuring things out. The coaches are calling the right plays, and Quinshon Judkins and Trevion Henderson are toting the rock like they want to. And this weekend, Ohio State's run game can have a bounce back game. It's not on the running backs, though. It's on the O-line, and it's on the coaches. The O-line first, because that's where things start, because they're on the field. Chip Kelly and Carlos Lachlan, they are not. One thing I like about this offensive line is that you have a vet in Seth McLaughlin that even if you're coming in off the bench or you're coming in to replace somebody who was injured, Seth McLaughlin got you. I mean, Seth McLaughlin has played a lot of ball. He's been good this year for Ohio State, kind of a bright spot on the offensive line. He has you. He can help you. He can show you the ropes. He can help you get to where you want to be. He can help this offensive line be everything it wants to be, even though there are injuries. Now, the issue comes into, will Justin Fry or will Ryan Day, will one of them two put the best five on the field? That's the question. Because if it's up to Justin Fry, what we have seen so far isn't that. If it's up to Ryan Day, I think Ryan Day will, but I don't know if Ryan Day is willing to go over his own position coaches. Because as we saw this past weekend on the defensive side of the ball, Jim Knowles says that, hey, it's up to Larry Johnson. He has faith in him to put the rotation the way that it wants to be. Ryan Day wants more rotation, but we didn't get that this past Saturday. So I'm really wondering, will Ryan Day go over in this position coach's head and say, no, I want more rotation, rotate these guys and these guys only. And if Ryan Day this weekend decides, hey, on D-line, I don't like what we get, and here's what we're going to do. In these plays, play these guys. On this, play these guys. And if he takes that approach to the offensive line, I won't say it'll be 100% perfect, because if you lose Josh Simmons for the year, that's huge, that's drastic. Do I think that putting Donovan Jackson at left tackle makes me comfortable? No, absolutely not. It makes me nervous. But if that's what Ryan Day thinks, and Ryan Day thinks Jackson at left tackle and Saravold at left guard is a move, great. The one thing that makes me nervous is that when Ryan Day talks about the reason why Luke Montgomery came in at left guard and Donovan Jackson went in at left tackle, it's because, well, they got reps, or Well, we had a belief in Zen Michalski. He's a program guy. He's been around for a long time. We like what we've seen in practice. Okay, cool. Okay. You also say that Zen Michalski, if he was healthy, he would be the starting left tackle. My eyeballs tell me that that would not be a wise decision. My eyeballs also tell me that I don't know if it's a bet. I don't know who else is going to play left tackle. That would be Donovan Jackson. Would Donovan Jackson be better? Maybe. Would Austin Saravel be better? We haven't seen it. I mean, I really have not seen Austin Saravel. I don't think anybody except for out in practice has seen Austin Saravel at left tackle. And that might be a better solution than putting Donovan Jackson at left tackle and Luke Montgomery at left guard. Because the one thing we know about Austin Saravel, which is very, very odd, and I didn't really mean to go down the rabbit hole of O-line conversations, but it's needed today. It's very, very needed. When it comes to offensive line, we did this a little bit with Paris Johnson Jr. Going from right to left is very, very difficult, as well as going from left to right. So if I'm Saravel and I've already shown I can play solid ball or above average ball at left guard and at right guard, I think what I'm showing you is, hey, I can go at left or right and I can get the job done. If Donovan Jackson is better suited between Donovan Jackson and Saravel, if Jackson is better at guard and Saravel is better at tackle, there is no issue moving him from left to right because he's already shown he can do that very well. The issue comes into, is he not as good on the right side because Tegra Shabola has been a little bit of an issue and Saravel has not really rotated as much or if at all at that spot. I don't like right guard or really O-line rotations at all. I find it very stupid. I know when Ryan Day said it, he was saying like, oh, we're going to rotate at right guard and they're both going to play. Y'all, that's dumb. I don't normally come on here and just push back on things coaches say. That's stupid. It's kind of similar to a two-quarterback system. That's one thing Ohio State might see this weekend between Drew Aller and Bo Prabula, who gives me a little Trace McSorley vibes, which I don't really like, man. Because McSorley was the last Penn State quarterback to beat Ohio State, and I got a feeling that if Bo Prabula plays this weekend, that's a formula that I don't know if Ohio State's able to stop. We'll talk about that later in the week. I don't want to dive into that today because right now thinking about Bo Prabula playing the quarterback position over Drew Aller, who Aller is a game-time decision. If Aller plays, I think Ohio State wins. That's probably where I'm leaning. Y'all heard the show yesterday. Ryan Bell, who I think is going to win the game. And so far, my opinion has not changed. Injuries just aren't good. Back to the offensive line that I kind of quickly got off of. The offensive line is needed for Ohio State's run game to get better. And it might be O-line and gap schemes versus O-line with what you're going to have with zone schemes. If you get gap schemes and you try to figure things out and you allow things to open up and you allow Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson to get a little bit downhill and the offensive line to work a little bit different. Because if you have an offensive line that's not really all the way there, yeah, gap schemes can make things a little bit difficult as far as you got that guy, you got this, but it might also make it a little bit easier because the offensive line knows where they're going. There's no guessing about, okay, we got this zone here, and all of a sudden, bam, do I get this guy? Is that for somebody else? Also, for the running backs, they might enjoy a little bit of gap scheme early and then sprinkle the zone in late. I mean, there's so many things Ohio State can do with the O-line this weekend to make sure the running game bounces back. Because for Will Howard to have another game where he just is just that dude, where I don't want to say he's been that dude. He's getting the job done. He's been solid, 75% passer, which is insane to think about Will Howard being able to do that multiple times this year, do it more often this year than he has previously. That's not a part of his game, man. He's really not that kind of quarterback. But Will Howard, that fire that he has, let that go to the run game. Also, one other thing, I've been beating the drum for this. I'm going to do it once again, and I'm not going to apologize for doing it. Play Patrick Gerd. Play Patrick Gerd. Play Patrick Gerd. Put him at fullback. Put him at H-back. Put him at tight end. If you want to boost your offensive line or your run game when the O-line is struggling, put a fullback in there, baby. Give Judkins a lead blocker. Give Henderson a lead blocker. And watch what happens next. That's all I got to say. Once again, 3 words. play Patrick Gert. One thing I would love to play is a little stockwatch game. We play it weekly around here at Locked on Buckeyes, and this week's stockwatch, number 17 is at the top of the list. Thank y'all for making Locked on Buckeyes your first listen every day. Cardell Tate, this performance this past week, his first 100-yard game as a Buckeye, it made me very, very excited about him and the future that he has as a Buckeye. Had a little injury this last year, his freshman year, that kind of set him back at times, but right now, he's not just a third receiver at Ohio State. He is a piece of the pie that Ohio State can lean on. He's one of those guys right now that are at Ohio State at receiver that will start at any other school in the country. And I'm very comfortable saying Cardell Tate will start at Alabama, will start at Ole Miss, will start at Texas. Name the school, Cardell Tate will start. Why? Because he's that good, man. And we saw that this past weekend with his touchdown, the 40-yard touchdown pass from Will Howard to Cardell Tate, where he had a key catch on the final scoring drive that Ohio State had against Nebraska. There are so many good things about Cardell Tate. We saw them this past weekend, and we want to see more this coming weekend. Julian Fleming was a third receiver last year. He transferred to Penn State, said, hey, let me go home. Let me go to a place where I think I can get a bigger piece of the pie. Why? Because Cardell Tate took his spot. Cardell Tate took his spot, and he's, 2 or 3 years younger than him. He said, hey, man, we know you have been a multi-year starter at Ohio State, Julian Fleming. We know you did some good things, but this is my spot now. And Cardell Tate, once again, against Nebraska, showed everybody he's not just a number 3 receiver. He is a guy that can be leaned on when the Buckeyes need a big catch. Look for number 17. He's going to get the job done. Someone else who got the job done against Nebraska is Cody Simon. He was one of our co-defensive players of the game. I think he was Ohio State's player of the game this past week. I believe I saw that on the Instagram. Cody Simon was a man possessed, and I cannot stop thinking about those stops during Nebraska's final drive of the game. Cody Simon, first down. That middle screen, which was so slow, developing, kind of confused me. Cody Simon said, oh, I got it. I think it was 1 or 2 plays later. It was a pass to the right. He said, oh, I got it. And Cody Simon had 8 tackles. I think he had multiple TFLs. And this man was so much fun to watch. He's a blocko. He's a leader. And the fact that Ryan Day named him as one of the top leaders at Ohio State, that's huge, man. Like, not only being the blocko and being a captain, but even at this point in the year, which is very, very crucial for Ohio State to accomplish all their goals. And for Cody Simon to be one of the top leaders on the team, that's great. But I'm going to need him to be a little bit more. I don't know if it's him. Sometimes you're trying to fire guys up, and guys don't want to be fired up. I've been there. You got a story I tell every now and then. Not going to tell it now for time's sake. But sometimes guys don't want to be fired up. Sometimes guys don't want to hear what you're talking about. That's just reality. That's just a part of the game. Nebraska didn't want to hear what Cody Simon was talking about, but he probably wasn't talking very much. He was probably talking with his play, and his play was phenomenal. Phenomenal. Led the Buckeyes in tackles last weekend, and it wouldn't shock me if this weekend he is a guy that's a very big piece of a Buckeyes defensive game plan, and if Penn State has no answer for him. Nebraska had an answer for this a little bit, but I'm going to put stock up on Ohio State sending more pressure. Not only stock up on Cardell Tate and stock up on Cody Simon, stock up on Ohio State blitzing more, having more pressure on the quarterback. There are still some things we want to clean up as far as angles and as far as why are you going so far upfield before we're trying to collapse the pocket, and why in the world are the guards and center able to kind of part the Red Sea and allow the quarterback to move up in the pocket to get a clear view, and maybe if it's open up and no one's there, you're going to get a 38-yard run like you got from Dylan Raiola. I don't think it's going to be a weekly thing, but the Buckeyes providing more pressure is huge, because that's one thing we have been saying all year. More pressure on the quarterback, more pressure on the quarterback. And even next year and the year after and the year after, I hope we don't have to keep saying more pressure on the quarterback. But if we pound the drum and beat the table and start making a whole lot of noise for Ohio State to provide more pressure, I hope they do it. I really, really do. Here is the negative side of this show. I don't want to turn negative once again, but stock down on Ohio State's run game. It needs to bounce back. It can bounce back this weekend. It'll be a struggle for that bad boy to bounce back, but bounce back is something that needs to happen because, baby, they didn't get the job done last weekend. I believe in the last 6 quarters, Ohio State's had less than 100 yards rushing. I believe it's 64 total rushing yards this past weekend, 19 rushing yards in the second half against Oregon. Yeah, I know it was a weekend between those two games, which you would think it would be better, but no, man. This has to change. This absolutely has to change. There is no question at all. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It has to change. You cannot accomplish all of your goals if the run game is like this. Think about this, though. Many people are starting to say that Ohio State's not a lock to beat Michigan, and also nobody's really saying Michigan's good. So let that sink in for you. If people aren't saying that Ohio State's a lock to beat Michigan and Michigan's not good, well, what can Ohio State do to kind of give themselves the upper hand in that game? And I think last I saw they're 18 or 18 and a half point favorites. I don't really care about Vegas, man. I don't really at all. This past weekend, Buckeyes are 25 and a half point favorites, and they only won by 4. So I'm not really putting much stock out of Vegas, at least in that context, because it's a rivalry game that's a little bit different. If the run game bounces back and it's more solid, that'll be a big way for Ohio State to beat Michigan down the road. Stock down on coach speak. I've heard way too much coach speak, specifically for Ryan Day, to the point that when you're talking about an injury, no matter what you say, we can kind of hear what you say and decipher it and say, no, this is what he's trying to say, but he's not actually saying it. We can do that, which is very confusing. It's not good. In the skull session before the game on Saturday, James Laurinaitis said the Buckeyes are going to play angry. They're going to play fast. Well, some of the linebackers did, but the team overall did not. I'm tired of coach speak. Very, very tired of it. It's really annoying when we got to say, oh, man, that's coach speak, man. Oh, Lathan Ransom, are you looking forward to him to getting a full week of practice? Okay, cool. He not playing. At least James Franklin, who does not do well against top 10 teams, at least James Franklin got enough of a head on him to say on Monday, so-and-so and so-and-so are game time decisions. What does that do? That alleviates a lot of the conversations he's going to have to answer, questions he's going to have to answer in regards to Drew Aller and Deni Dennis Sutton and those injuries. Why? Because he already said they are game time decisions. Talk to him later in the week. Maybe talk to him on game day, but don't do it a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. He already said the game time decisions. Ryan Day won't do that. I understand the gamesmanship. I understand the strategy. But y'all, this ain't right. This ain't right at all. One other thing I'm down on is this game being at big noon. Fox has put a lot of their money, a lot of the advertising dollars, the energy and the cameras and all of that stuff to make Big Noon a big deal. It is a big deal. This game is a big deal. It'd be a bigger deal in prime time. Now, I don't know the World Series schedule. Haven't looked it up to see if there's a possibility of a game being Saturday night. And if it is, cool. You're not putting Ohio State, Penn State on FS1. Definitely not FS2. That's a big Fox game. That's one of the things here is that it's a big Fox game. Noon's always there. CBS got 3:30. NBC has 7:30. Hey, Fox ain't gonna have this game. I would not complain if Todd Blackledge got the call game at his alma mater and if Noah Eagle was on the call with Catherine Tappan. I would not be mad at all. Why? They do a great job. We got to hear Noah Eagle on the show. It's very much like an NFL broadcast, and they do a phenomenal job. I actually like listening to Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge over Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. And I like Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt. I'm just starting to think that Noah Eagle and Todd Blackledge are a better broadcast duo. I'm going to leave it there. I'm going to get up out of here before somebody says Jay has lost his mind. Thank y'all for listening to Locked On Buckeyes and making it your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Big Ten podcast. Craig Sheeman is a guy that puts the Big Ten first when everyone else overlooks it. Find Locked On Big Ten on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at jstevens07. Send every email to jstevens at 317@gmail.com. This has been Locked On Buckeyes on a hump day. We'll see you next time.